very nice to meet you.
Hello, everyone. I have with me today, I'm very excited, Linda Landon. And we're going to be talking about human design and other things related to sexuality. But first, I want to hear a little bit about Linda, her background, and what she does. So, Linda, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh my gosh, Amber, I don't even know where to start. I could tell the story of how I found human design or it found me.
Okay,
Um, would you
sure.
like me to start there?
Sure, absolutely. And then we'll weave in how you're doing what you're doing, because I think it's something that is not being done a whole lot. And I
Yes.
want everyone to hear about that. But go ahead and tell me about.
Okay, so there's kind of two stories. So the first story is around 2016. I was introduced to human design by Robin Wynn, who's another one of our co-authors on Stop Over Working, Start Overflowing.
Yes.
And I checked it out and I read your story, and it's very similar to your story. Like the one human design type I never wanted to be is the one that I am.
Yeah.
And I was blown away
Mm.
because I learned that everything I'd been doing up to this point in my life was wrong and not working for me. And that made total sense because I kept pushing and like with my business and getting to a certain level of success and then
Right.
just losing it and burning out. So I
Yeah.
like you burned
Yes.
out many, many times. And now that I'm learning to be a projector, and particularly a 5-2 projector, which is
Um,
really interesting, I've learned to live by it's like what would I say? My mantra is rest, play, and then do a little work.
mm.
Or another way to say it is to follow my pleasure.
Oh, I like that.
So that is very tied into how I approach working with couples and sexuality.
Okay.
And oh my gosh, there's such a journey around that. When I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, I thought I was frigid. I'm just going to
Mhm.
say that. I was able to get turned on, excited, and really attracted to people. But when it came to sex, particularly penetration sex,
Mm.
you might want to warn your audience. This could get a little,
Right.
explicit. Is that okay?
That's fine. I'll put that below and also in the intro for sure.
Yeah. So April, when I become intimate with someone and would move into penetration sex, my vagina would just completely shut down. It was just
Mhm.
not having it.
Right.
And I faked it really well, as many women do. I rarely had climaxes, maybe
Mm.
by myself, but not with a partner.
Right.
And and then for many years I was with women, and that was much more sexually satisfying to me.
Mhm.
But there was also a way that I was still the one in charge. I had control. So I never allowed myself to really surrender
Right.
into my feminine orgasm, like my real, true feminine sexuality, or what one of my favorite teachers calls feminist sexuality.
Mhm.
And so there was still this, like, there was this sense of tremendous potential, but something missing. So
Right.
when I was with women, I didn't experience myself as frigid because I had arousal and I was, fluid and wet and all that good stuff, but there was still this holdback.
Mhm.
And then in my early 50s, I entered into a period of celibacy, and I didn't even know.
Mm.
I didn't even know that was what I was going to choose. It just sort of chose me.
Right.
And so for years, I was not in relationship,
Mhm.
and I was
Mhm.
exploring sexuality. I explored tantric sexuality. I explored all different kinds. And then I found something called orgasmic meditation. Have you ever
Hmm.
heard of that?
I had not heard of that until I saw your website, and I thought that's something I want to find out about.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, orgasmic meditation is a practice that's centuries old, but it was kind of given a name and a really specific instructions and direction by this brilliant woman named Nicole Daedone.
Mhm.
And orgasmic meditation is a practice where with two people, one is the woman,
Mhm.
or shall we say, someone who has got female genitalia, because in this
Okay.
non-binary world, it could be anyone.
Right.
So this person lies down and the other person strokes her clitoris in a very particular way for very limited, like contained amount of time. And it's all about taking the goals off the table, taking any expectations whatsoever, and just being there for the point of contact and feeling into the sensations that arise.
Hmm.
And the person who is doing the stroking is stroking for their own pleasure, and the person who is receiving for their own pleasure. It's incredible. It just, like, it's not going anywhere. And at the end, like, it goes lots of places in terms of
Hmm.
sensation, but there's no expectation that it's supposed to lead to something else.
Right.
And at the end of the practice, the timer goes off and you complete and ground, and then you just put the woman or the female genital person puts their clothes back on. The other person who's stroking is completely clothed.
Okay.
And then they just go on their way.
Mm.
You don't go
Interesting.
into the bedroom. You can do it with your partner. You can do it with, I had like many partners who were just my oming partners.
Right.
But it's separate from sexual activity.
Okay.
And
So it
yet
kind
it's
of
this,
takes the pressure off a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I learned from that was I had an infinite, I'm a little like tongue tied this, I think I'm a little nervous.
Sure.
I had this infinite capacity for sensation, and it just blew the doors off of what was
Wow.
possible for me. So when I entered again into an intimate relationship with someone who was a man,
Hmm.
I was able to welcome and enjoy penetration without any pain,
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
because I'd learned how to tune into myself, what my
Mhm.
body needed, what
Mhm.
turned me on, what didn't, and to take my time. And
Right.
really, one of the things that I learned in the practice is how to give my partner very clear requests so
Oh,
that they can know how to satisfy me. And then
right.
vice versa, I can do that for them. So there's no more mind tripping, guesswork. You should know. It just all taken off, and you get very direct and clear in your communication.
Wow.
So with that in my bag, and then I had human design and years of experience in what I call sensory awareness or sensing. I had this vast capacity, and I'd been a body worker also, by the way, for
Right.
15 years before I was a
Right.
coach. I had this tremendous capacity to meet and be present in the moment with the subtlest nuanced touch. So I
Mm.
blended it all together and started to work with couples.
Wow.
Because what I realized is that when a couple comes in for a session, they're not ready to do, the orgasmic meditation. It's
Right.
just too much.
It's a lot.
So,
Yeah.
so I've scaled it way back.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so that's sort of my story. And that's,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like the walls just kind of came down through your own journey of exploration and communication I think it's difficult for people to talk about it. It's difficult for them to ask for what they need. Um, there's a part of us that, you know, is uncertain or insecure about that, and to kind of have the courage and the freedom to be able to do that. I can see how that would be a very healing journey.
And one of the things, I mean, what you're speaking to is so true for everyone in this culture, male, female, trans, gay,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, but we aren't taught that it's okay to go into ourselves and discover who we are, what
Right.
brings us pleasure, let alone how to ask for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a big part of the practice. And of course, as you can imagine, human design supports that,
Hmm.
because one of the great lessons in human design is when you know your partner's type and strategy, you can frame your questions in such a way that they can really hear you and
Hmm.
feel met and
Yeah.
be very willing and happy to respond.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it does vary by type, and as far as communication is concerned, and that translates into the sexual experience. Like it really makes a difference because I know I've found I've, been married 33 years to a generator. I'm a manifester, that how I phrase a question, it makes all the difference in the world to him. And also, for me as well, it doesn't, we don't communicate the same way, but understanding that, I can see how that would increase the level of intimacy when we're able to communicate it in a way where the other person can understand and really feels heard.
And since, you and I are both open sacral beings.
Yes.
So, and for those of you who are listening, you've probably heard this, but just I'm not going to assume anything. So in human design, there are different centers, and the sacral center is what makes you a generator, manifesting generator, or not. And if you're not, you're a manifester, projector, or a reflector. And
Right.
that sacral center is like it's your sexual center.
Mm-hmm.
And with a generator and a manifesting generator, that center is defined. And what that can look like in relationship is that the person with the defined center has a kind of rhythm and regularity and consistency to how they like to have sexual
Right.
connection and play. It
Right.
might mean they like a certain position or a certain time, or there's just a certain rhythm that's consistent and I don't want to say sort of predictable, but also very reliable for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
there's also, we could say, with people with defined sacral centers, that there's also kind of a consistent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of a consistent desire. Well, it can be desire or total lack of desire for
Right.
sexual contact.
Right. Right.
Now, if you have an open sacral center, you can be really fluid
Mm-hmm. I have
in
found.
how you
Sure.
are
Yeah.
sexually, how you respond, what you want, where, how, it's just the realm of possibilities is open to you because you have this wide open center.
Right. Yes. That is absolutely true. I found that to be true. And
Yeah.
it's just, and once you understand that about the other, the expectation or the misunderstanding, we just assume everyone should be like us and function like we do. But in human design, we find out that there is so much nuance and variety in terms of how people's energy functions. And no one is the same as another person. And so bringing that into an intimate relationship, bringing that understanding into an intimate relationship is a very powerful thing and a healing thing. I think it's one of the modes by which we heal. That's
And
beautiful.
when I'm just pausing for a second. I'm going up to preferences on the Zoom and I'm just gonna lighten my screen a little.
Okay.
It's just want you to know and I'm not getting what I want. So
Sure.
this may take a moment. Bear with me, everyone. There we go. There's a way. Let's just see if this is a little better. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for the timeout. There, a little
Okay.
brighter. So when I was playing and not with one person, and I was doing a lot of sexual explore. I mean, I was very sexually active. I just wasn't in an intimate relationship with one person. What I discovered was that I was different. My sexual energy was different with different people because
Right.
I could take in and amplify whatever they were bringing.
Yes.
So it was a very fun time.
It sounds like a wonderful time of self-discovery and not
Yeah.
one that everybody unfortunately gets to experience or chooses to experience. And I
Yeah.
think it's great that you're providing a bridge for that because again, it's not something that's I don't feel like it's discussed a whole lot in the human design world. So I think it's beautiful that
I know.
you're bringing it forth. The pandemic. Um,
Yes.
one of the things that we discussed earlier is that it changed things for people. And a lot
Mhm.
of people are really struggling in this arena in terms of feeling like they do have sexual desire or don't have sexual desire, or they don't feel like they can connect. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I've been noticing with the people I've been working with, um, I'll give a couple examples. Like, for instance, one couple, she has a full-time job. He's in school and they're both living, working at home, and they have 2 young kids. So
Oof.
so actually, before the pandemic, she's working in an office, he's at school, and they have childcare for like a 3 and a 7-year-old.
Okay.
Then the pandemic hits.
Mhm.
She's working at home full time. She doesn't have a designated office. So she's moving from the dining room to a little desk in the hallway to
Mm.
one of the kids' rooms, trying to find privacy to do a really high powered job.
Oh,
The
goodness.
childcare is non-existent
Mhm.
initially, and eventually the daycare center opens up so the kids can go to daycare. And then he's still commuting to school, but then he's coming back and he's working at home. And it's just
Right.
so everybody feels like they're in this pressure cooker and they're just piled on top of each other.
Mhm.
Plus, bless her heart, this client is a protector.
Oh, okay.
And as you may know, being an open sacral being, those of us who have this kind of energy need space.
Yes, very much
Sometimes we
so.
need to sleep in a different room than our partner.
Yes.
And there was none of that.
Right.
So, um, so their sexual energy was just like, it was just like, that's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Because really all they wanted to do was kind of get away from each other.
Sure. Yeah, understandably.
So fortunately, I mean, I was working with them during pandemic and we found some ways just to create more space
Mhm.
instead of pushing them together to give them more space. And with more space, there came more desire to come back together.
Mhm.
And then we were able to start moving into some somatic practices to reconnect and touch, taking all the goals of quote sex off the table. And
Right.
now they're stabilizing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Sometimes
But
it's the pressure, the pressure is not something that is conducive to a healthy sexual life at all.
yeah, and that the absence of your partner can make them more desirable. And when you're
Yes.
living on top of each other, together, that's gone.
Yes. Yeah, and that's been the case for a lot of people. They've been cooped up in the same house or room together, and absence makes the heart grow fonder. I mean, and particularly for non-sacral beings, we really take in so much of that energy that we have to find some way to have some solitude to expel that. And if we can't do that, it can just feel so like a pressure cooker, like just
Totally.
overwhelming.
Pressure, some solitude, some way to get out and go somewhere. And there was no getting out, going anywhere.
Right, right. Oh,
I mean, I have another couple who were in a similar situation on top of each other, but fortunately, they live near a beach, so she could get out and go walk on the beach, but she
okay.
needed to get away.
Yeah.
And for them, one of their great ways of connecting was to travel together. Like in the
Mhm.
traveling and exploring, they had this way of just being enjoyed together, and that was just taken
Yes.
away from them.
Yeah, when you're at home, you're constantly reminded of all the things that you need to do,
Yeah.
that you've neglected to do. And, you cannot fully relax. So I can see how that caused a lot of difficulty for people that weren't used to having that dynamic. I would think it would be similar to like a couple that retire.
And
It,
all of a sudden,
yeah, it's like, oh goodness, we're just constantly together. And, it's important to have those breaks.
mhm,
It makes us appreciate one another more. And then again, a break from the environment, because your environment can be not conducive to relaxation, especially if you have small children or like you said, you're working at home. So you saw quite an increase of problems or difficulties and struggles with people during and after the pandemic.
yeah, I mean, we're still just coming out of it. And so
Yeah.
there's just this residue
Yeah.
that's hanging over people.
Yeah.
You pointed out something really important, which is when you're in a home environment, especially when you can't get away much,
Right.
you're constantly, your mind switches on and it's constantly sort of absorbed with what needs to be done in the house.
Mhm.
And when you have that activity going on in the mind, it's very hard to just let go and be in the moment with what is.
Yes.
And when I work with my couples, I do a lot of practices to help them just be here in the moment
Mhm.
together with what is arising.
Right.
And as I say that, I can even feel my whole physiology start to relax.
Mm.
And, we start with, I can give you like, I do a balance between sort of the didactic educational work,
Mhm.
pieces on how to have more effective communication using human design and listening mirror skills and various practices. Everything is like a practice
Right.
when I teach. And I also always have them do some kind of somatic body-based practice together, which can be as simple as sitting back to back,
Mhm.
not touching, just each person tapping into their own body, their own breath, the ground under them,
Mhm.
the floor under their feet, and then slowly bringing their backs together, or even before that, sensing the presence of the other, and
Mm.
then slowly bringing the backs together, feeling the warmth, whatever arises, feeling the sensation of that, the
Right.
emotions that arise, and then moving separate, and then variations on that,
Mhm.
all nonverbal.
Mhm. Right.
And then at some point, I teach them how to do very simple communications like, can you lean a little less or a little more? Or, and then as we develop very, very, very simple ways of making requests, we cultivate more complex somatic practices together that they can weave in. But
Okay.
in doing this thing happens and you can see it. Like I work virtually and I see it on the computer screen. Their whole physiology starts to soften. Their
Mm.
faces change. Their voices drop.
Mhm.
They become softer in
Mm.
their speech and how they see each other.
Mhm.
And we do a lot of that before we even embark on any kind of practices that involve sexual genital contact.
Right. Because sex doesn't start at the act or it and that's I think where there's a lot of confusion in our culture. It's something that y- happens way before any of that even occurs. And I think if we can wrap our head around that and do what you're saying, which is to be really fully present, uh, it'll make a huge difference and to communicate. And so these communication styles are very different. So if I'm a manifester, which I am, and my partner is a generator, which he is, um, what's that dynamic like in terms of us communicating more effectively together?
Well, I'm sort of curious what you have learned so far. Like, I mean, what I'm guessing you already know is that if you want something or you like something, you let your partner know.
Mhm. I
And what's
inform him.
You inform him. And what's really important with what I call making requests is that you do it in a loving kindness based way.
Right.
You put in something that's like a gentle affirmation or encouragement.
Mhm.
Like that feels really great. Can you just do it a little more or stay a little longer, go a little deeper or
Right.
but for you, you would just say that feels really good. Do more of that. You don't even have to make it a question. But
Right.
wait a minute, he's a generator. So you do say, can you do a little? So
Yes.
you can blend the informing with the yes, no.
Yes. And be gentle about it in the way that I speak, because I think that's the other thing too. We think our partners should read our minds
Hmm.
or that they will like what we like, and that's not always the case, is it? And I think that's where the communication is so very important. We like to think we know what they like, and maybe we do to a certain extent, but we can always improve upon that. I mean, and it's not to say anybody's doing anything wrong or not well. It's just not really possible to like get in another person's skin and fully understand what they enjoy or what they don't enjoy.
And what I always like to hold as a possibility is that y- you may know what you like, and there may be more.
Right. Yeah.
So you think you know what your partner's likes, and maybe you do, but there may be so much more for them to explore and tap into.
Exactly. And we're still
Yeah,
learning about ourselves. I mean, it's a lifetime journey.
yeah.
You may not know that you like something until further down the road. You just kind of discover it like a hidden treasure or something.
And that was my experience and my exploration during that time of, when I say celibacy, celibacy from an intimate relationship, but I
Mhm.
was discovering ways of being in contact with people sexually and just in communication and other ways that were just like I had no idea that was available to me and that would bring me pleasure and that would be fun. It was just like all the time, just discovery. And I think that's another thing I like to bring into a partnership is that help them re-enter that place of discovery and adventuring and
Mhm.
excitement and learning about each other, like being open and curious,
Right.
which is a very, very, very important part of communication, deep listening, is
Yes.
going into that space of curiosity.
Yes. I think that's, and that makes it an adventure, doesn't it? I mean, and I think that's kind of what gets lost, when you're in a situation where you're raising children and you're just doing the typical tasks day in, day out, or you're in a situation where you've been married for a really long time or in a relationship for a very long time, and you don't always like realize there's more layers to this. There's more to be explored, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and I think when we've been together with someone for a while, and that's those are the people I really like to work with, you
Mhm.
know, you build up these patterns of relating, these habits that are comfortable and safe
Mm,
and predictable, but they get a little boring.
sure. That's normal. That's just so normal.
And
Um,
then, like, how can you spice it up?
right. And why not? Why not do that? That's
Yeah,
exciting. So
yeah.
you're doing some research in preparation for a book you're writing about this.
Mhm.
And you're offering couples coaching for free if they
Yeah,
participate in this. Can you
yeah.
tell us a little bit more about this book and what you're offering?
So I don't know the title of it yet, but you're
Okay.
sort of getting the flavor of it.
Right.
And it's really, I mean, anyone, hetero, non-binary, trans, gay can read this.
Mhm.
It's going to be geared towards hetero, but it's available. It works for
Sure.
anyone.
Okay.
But this book is for a couple who are like later on in life, like
Mhm.
50s, 60s, maybe their kids have grown
Right.
and they've been together for a while and they're coming out of the pandemic and they've just hit this kind of what you could call sexual burnout, sort of this flat zone.
Yes.
And they've lost that sense of adventure and they want to reconnect. They
Mhm.
find that they fight a lot over stupid shit and
Yeah.
they're not really feeling connected and they're rarely having sex. And if they are, it's very kind of obligatory and not very
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
So this book is for them.
Oh, wonderful.
And it goes through various layers. And we sort of start at a very basic, simple, like the idea is you sort of build comfort and traction in a certain level of relating, and then we just raise the bar a little bit, and then
Mhm.
we raise the bar a little bit more, and then we raise the bar a little bit more, so that by the end of the book, it's moving more into taking some of the skills they've learned back into the bedroom.
Mhm.
Um, a big thing that gets taken off the table in the beginning of the work together is this. I'm talking about the whole book. When I work with couples, I'll
Right.
speak to that. Um, is any sense of goal. We're going to take goals off the table and we're going to
Good.
open up to presence-based sexuality, presence-based sensuality, just
Mhm.
tapping into what feels good.
Nice. I like
So, so that's where the book is going. And then for the research, I mean, I've worked with couples, but I would like to work with more couples and I'd like to work with some who are coming off the pandemic. So I'm
Mhm.
offering 3 75-minute coaching sessions and it will get you started. It's not going to take you through the whole book.
Okay.
And when I work with people, I don't put a format like the book is going to have like a flow and a sort of a structure to it. But when I work with you as a couple,
Mhm.
I'm going to really be meeting you where you are
Mm.
and exploring like what's your heart's desire, each of you individually and as a couple, and then
Right.
we'll go from there. And whatever comes in to those sessions will be what arises in the moment. It's the best practice.
Hmm.
So it may not follow the order of the book, but the work that you do with me will inform how I write the book, help
That's really
inform.
beautiful. What a neat partnership. And it really is going to help a lot of people. And it's very exciting. And I love the fact that you're not approaching it with a goal in mind. I mean, that just hearing you say that makes me relax. There's something so heavy about we have to get to the finish line. We have to accomplish this thing. I mean, that's just not the way. It just doesn't feel natural that way. So I love that you recognize these things. You sound like you are a brilliant observer of human nature and behavior, and you really tapped into something very special in terms of its connection to human design.
Yeah.
How sexuality is really connected to how our energy is very individual. We're not cookie cutter versions of one another.
And as you know, our teachers like to say in human design, we're all like exquisite puzzle parts and we
Yeah.
all fit together and we all need each other.
Yes.
And I really believe that two people come together because there's this way that they're meant to fit, but
Yes.
it's not cookie cutter.
No, this is very revolutionary, and I'm excited about this. I will definitely be getting that book because it sounds fascinating to me.
Oh,
And
thank
as a
you.
projector, I mean, you're really here to do that work, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful, really beautiful. So, I don't want to keep you all day, Linda. I know your time is very precious, but I have one more question for you. And it's
Mhm.
a question that I ask all my guests, and there's no right or wrong answer. If you could live at any time in history, when would that be and why?
You know, I'm going to say now
Okay.
because can I say a little more? Yes, a little more
Please
to that.
do. Yes, absolutely.
Um, in the last 2 years, I using human design and also another system called have you heard of astrocartography?
Yes. Oh,
So
that's
I
interesting.
I explored when I opened to human design, I opened up so many possibilities for myself. And I was living in Los Angeles and I was not happy there.
Hmm.
So I took years actually to explore using human design and astrocartography, which is a way of mapping where
Mhm.
on the planet is a good place for you. And I discovered Asheville, North Carolina. And 2 years ago, I decided to move here when the pandemic had just started.
Oh, wow.
And I did it. And as a projector, which was major. And I did it solo with the help of my fur family. And I am here in this beautiful home overlooking the mountains in the
Mm.
country. And my heart is so full. And yes, the world is a mess. And I'm so happy I'm here. So I feel like I need to be here now because there are things that I have that are offerings that will come through me. And
Right.
this is a really pivotal time. And you know that in terms of human
Yes.
design, we're going through a huge change.
Yes, we are. Mm.
And I think this is the time. I don't want to go back. And I
Right.
don't want to skip over.
I love that answer. That's perfect. And we're neighbors. I'm only about 4 hours from you, so 4 or 5. Yeah.
You are in,
Georgia.
oh, that's
Yeah. 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 So not too far. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for those that are going to find you and really benefit from what you've learned and what you're giving. And I just thank you so much for being courageous
right.
and really connecting the dots. I think this is needed. So thank you, Linda, so much. Um, to find you, I've got all of your relevant information, and what I will do is post that underneath this video. But listen, you guys, if you want to get in on this, you might want to do it soon.
Yeah.
Because I think once this goes out, she's going to get busy, and we'll have plenty of people for research for her upcoming book. So thank you, Linda, so much for being with us. And thank you to everybody for joining us. And I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Bye
Thank
now.
you, April.
Bye.